All right, we are live. Hey guys, we are live on Stay Wild Child, and I can't believe it's episode 14. And so this is just so exciting for me, just to be able to bring you these episodes and bring you just like incredible women that I so admire who are stepping into their uniqueness, who are stepping into their own badassness and just like living on purpose. And I absolutely love it. So this is my friend, Treisha Peterson. And her and I met through yoga teacher training, I think like 7 years ago now, right?
Oh my gosh, so long.
Right, I know. It's just, yeah, it seems like another time actually. But yeah, we met through yoga teacher training, and we have just remained friends. And Treisha, you're always someone who, like, I don't even think you realize it, but like you just drop these little seeds of, they're just little seeds of gold. And I just, you know, they're just little things that you say, and I pick them up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I never thought about it that way. And so I really, really have always appreciated you in my life. And I really look up to you and just admire the work that you're doing. And I appreciate you being on today.
Yay. Well, those are kind words. Thanks.
Well, of course. So I always start this way. I always like to do just like a little background story, if you don't mind. Okay. So a lot of times I have found, and I kind of say the same thing every time we get started, but a lot of times I think that some women see other women doing their thing and they think, oh yeah, well, she's just always been that way, right? She's just always had that knowledge, right? Like she learned that in her 20s. You know, they don't see the evolution, you know, yeah. And they don't see the pain and the healing and the life events, and they don't see all of that, and they just think, oh well, yeah, she just got to it because she learned that in college or whatever. So I always like to kind of do just a little back story, if you don't mind, and just kind of share with us, because, you know, I think of you as someone who's really on that enlightened path, and you're just super aware, and you're really taking those action steps. So let's just go back just a little bit. You start wherever you choose, and you just kind of start where your journey began.
I kind of feel like I have 3 different journeys, so that's kind of hard to try to decide. I'm actually just trying to decide how they merge together. Like, this is the year that I'm going to try to figure out where they all fit.
Sure.
But I think that honestly, my journey to the spiritual aspect of it, and like to those little nuggets, started because I grew up in a really small town community. And I've said this, I don't know if I've said this to you, but in a really monochromatic community. So we all looked and talked and worshiped and breathed and hobbied very similarly to one another. At least that's how it felt from my perspective. And I just never felt like I fit in. And for a long time lived in that place of, well, if I just work a little harder, if I do a little better, eventually I'll fit in. Or if I fake it until I make, you know, I'll make it eventually. And I think when you and I met, I know we've talked about this, but I was like a nervous breakdown trying to decide, am I going to go to school? Am I going to do yoga teacher training? What am I going to do when I grow up? And that whole cycle of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And it was kind of then that I started asking myself, like digging deep and asking, is this thing that I've been carrying since I was little, is it really true? Is this belief really true? Or has it morphed, or is it completely different? So that's kind of how that started for me. And then I did the teacher training, the yoga teacher training, and loved teaching because I felt like I had a place to spit those little pieces of wisdom. Right. And that was really nice for me. And then our family actually had a lot of challenges about 5 years ago. And I started digging into my beliefs and seeing that my kids still had those beliefs, even though I didn't feel like I had taught those things. So I went back to school to try to dig into that from an academic perspective and try to figure out, wait, if this happened to my kids, like had always made the excuse that the way I felt was because of the way I grew up. I didn't have a rich father. My mom passed, like I had all these stories, but my kids didn't have any of those things. And so I was thinking, well, if they picked it up, how many other people are picking this stuff up?
Right.
And now I'm here.
Now you're here. Absolutely. I think we were in similar places when we started that yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
We found that a lot of women that we've done yoga teacher training with, or that, you know, are doing it now, they kind of, it really is the beginning of like an awareness and like an awakening to, what the hell am I going to be when I grow up? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So, your free and full podcast that you do, I want to talk just a little bit. It was around a post that you made maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. You did this beautiful post. And it's interesting that you just talked about stories, because, you know, the story that society, everyone talks about is that January 1st, everything's going to be different. Right? And I loved your article that you wrote. I loved your piece because it, like I said, you always drop little wisdom nuggets for me. And it just gives people the permission to look at things a different way. And maybe it will resonate with them and maybe it won't. But for me, it really resonated with me because this year in particular, I began a workshop in January and I thought, man, I wish I would have waited. You know, I wish I would have waited, but I didn't. And because I thought, January 1st, everybody's going to be ready for change. And I wish that I would have, trusted my instincts, but I thought, okay, well, everyone is kind of in that flow. So go talk just a little bit about the article that you wrote.
So what I had written is, there is that huge thing, January 1st is New Year's resolution time. And I think over the past decade, I know I started it about 15 years ago, creating a word of the year. And it seems like slowly over time, that's getting more and more a thing. And my past 4 years have not turned out at all aligned with my word of the year. Like I dropped it. And so this year I kept on thinking, so it happened in 2 ways, that article. So the first thing is I kept on thinking, what do I want to go back into 2019? And what was the pervasive theme that gave me strength? Like where did my wins come from in 2019? And I just kept looking through my journal and my calendar and realized there was so many moments of grace in my life in 2019. So I wanted the reflective year or the reflective word instead of that bounce forward word. But the article was actually centered around something I learned. Like seriously, I've got a slew of kids, you know that I've got 6 kids.
Right.
And January 1st is the stupidest time to set New Year's resolutions if you've got kids at home. And I think when you and I were talking, I said, we spend more money, we eat more calories, we go to more parties in the 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's than we do all year round. And so it was honestly, I looked back in my notes and it's probably been 20 years since I started the not doing New Year's resolutions until February 15th. It took me 2 weeks before my kids went back to school and a month to kind of reflect on, everybody wants to lose weight the day after Christmas. I mean, we just overate for a month. But by February, not all of us are so worried about our weight anymore. So that's kind of what the article was, is, maybe it's okay to reflect back and then give yourself permission to what really matters to me this year. And for me, I get more done in 10 months than I do in 12 easily.
Yeah, I love it. And we're going to, I'm going to make sure that you share again on our Stay Wild Child episode, probably in November, maybe early December, so that we can remind everyone, because it's give yourself grace as you're easing into the first of the year. And I love that word, grace, because we're so hard on ourselves and the way we think life should look. And grace is a really powerful word. I like that.
Yeah. And we can, like I was even thinking the other day, today's the 17th. And I thought, well, that's a dumb day to start New Year's. Like, should it be the 15th? Should it be a Monday? And I mean, that's just so much pressure. It can be any day is a new day.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. You can always start again tomorrow, or you can always pick it as day one instead of, someday. So it always has that opportunity for a beginning. I loved the reflection piece as well. We did a meditation. I go to a lady, Andrea, she spoke on Stay Wild Child in January, and we did a meditation, and we went back where things were a year ago, just during the meditation, just to see the progression. And that was so powerful for me because wow, have things expanded, right? So much in just a year. It's so powerful. And so the fact that you went through, and I do kind of look through my calendar a little bit, but I love that going back and reflecting and looking through your journals. I have to imagine that that's really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had that same thing where you see how much you've grown. But the one thing that was really interesting as I was going through, because I was thinking, God, the way I set New Year's resolutions even changes from year to year. So I was reflecting on this one year, and it was actually the year we met. And I had created some New Year's resolutions that the year before, I should say, I had created some New Year's resolutions, and they had turned from teeny little seeds to these huge harvests. And when I looked back on that year, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that again. Imagine what I could do if I did that every year. But then that next year was so hard on me because I had put all the pressure of all the success of the end of the year onto the beginning of my new year. And so there was all this weight, so it's almost like the beauty is in the becoming, but not in the assumptions that will happen. Does that?
Sure.
I feel like it's the process of letting the seed slowly just take sprout and take root and then burst through the ground. But sometimes we've got this image of this beautiful flower that the poor seed doesn't even have time to sprout before we're upset that it's not moving fast enough. And so I had to really learn to step back and go, every new goal is a brand new goal. It can't be, I tease my kids all the time and say, I've got the two biggest bitches in my life are used to, could, and want to be. And oh my gosh, they're so mean to me.
Yes.
So I just have to rest in who I am right now, just the me right now.
Absolutely. It's like taking the actioning out of it and just moving into the flow. And yeah, it was interesting. We just, I just went to Oprah this weekend at American Airlines Center, and that was so much of what it was about. It was just, being present in this moment. And we get in such a hurry, and especially at the first of the year, to try to action into everything. And obviously, I was super guilty of it. I put a lot of pressure on myself because I thought, oh, well, that's what needs to happen. And I'm going to shift that. So thank you for enlightening me on allowing me to give myself grace and ease into this process versus, action Nicole.
I know.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about your podcast that you do with your daughter. You want to give me just like a little background on that and how you guys got started?
We got started because we both were considering podcasts individually, but her and I kept having these long conversations. She was in the process of healing from just a lot of changes that she had taken, but she had felt so lonely. She had decided that the religion that we practiced as a family wasn't going to fit for her life, and a lot of her lifestyle preferences didn't align with what she thought we would find pleasing. So there was a lot of there were a couple of years where we tiptoed around each other, for lack of a better word. We both knew things were happening, but nobody knew how to bridge those hard conversations. And then we started to kind of have those conversations, and one day, and then I just said, hey, do you want to take these into the podcast instead of us both trying to do something separate? Do you want to do this together? And we have a lot of similar ideas, but we're, a generation apart, so we've got lots different perspective. So that's how it got started. And it's been fun. It's been probably one of my funnest projects.
That's incredible. It's free and full, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, I love it. How often is your launch? How often are the podcasts?
So we started out with we started with every week, and now we're every other week, but we take 2 pauses during the year. So we're just getting ready to kick off a season 3.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Oh yeah, I love it. That's so cool. It's awesome to be able to do something with your child and have that interaction and that personal experience. I'm sure that really fills your heart with joy.
I know, it's been a lot of fun. We just planned it yesterday for, our topics for this upcoming season. So it's fun. It's been a fun project.
Oh, very good. Any sneak peeks on what we can tune into?
We are going to talk about the importance of the yin and yang of masculine and feminine. So we're super excited about that. And we are going to talk about how meditation and prayer might be different and how they might be the same. A lot of people, so I study religion and what happens when people decide to leave the religion of their upbringing. And that prayer piece is a really big thing that keeps people from being okay. Well, there's a lot, but anyway. So we're going to talk about prayer and meditation and how they differ and how they're the same. And then we're going to talk about the importance of worst case scenario and why sometimes it's really important to allow yourself to rest in worst case. And that there's a lot of courage in facing that scenario. So those are some of them.
Gotcha. All right. So let's talk about your trauma response yoga.
Oh, okay.
That you offer. Yeah. With adolescents. Do you want to dive into that just a little bit and share with us exactly what trauma response yoga is and what brought you to teaching? Yeah.
So when I was doing the yoga teacher training, I started to learn a lot about the way that we store emotions in our body. And when I would teach yoga classes, it would be so interesting. I know it's common to cry, but there would be probably more often than not, I had people in tears in my classes, and they would come up and they would mention that they had like this memory and it just moved through their body. They could feel the ache move out. And so I started kind of questioning that a little bit and trying to decide, can I manipulate that? And, can I really be part of, I don't want to use the word therapist, but can I help them move through that? Can I coach them through that in a more intentional way? So I did some trauma-informed training, both from the yoga perspective and from the mindfulness perspective. So I've got a couple of different certifications for that. And then I just, as I went back to school and started studying, I specifically study adolescents with hope, identity, and religion, and how those are so important to adolescent well-being or distress. And so I started working with teenagers and helping them manage some of the mindset, the chatter that they were having in their head, and working with families that were struggling to communicate that with their teenagers. So that's kind of how that was born and how that kind of works in my life right now.
So are you, during the yoga session, when someone is on their mat, are you doing like Reiki? Is it like energy healing that you're?
No, and to be honest, a lot of times it's been kind of funny because people say that, well, what kind of yoga flow are you doing? And we're not flowing. They are usually on their mat, but we're more taking the 8 limbs of yoga and working through, like Kriya, what can we clean out of your mind? That's Svadhyaya, where you're looking at what's really happening in your heart. What's the bigger purpose of this? Can we use this as a seed instead of a story? And so we work a lot. So sometimes we might only do a couple of postures and hold those postures, you know, like a throat opener or a heart opener or a hip opener, but it's not a full flow. It's just more of, where are you? How can we get rid of this? Where is it being stored? Because a lot of times we have, like, if you think about it, you might wake up in the morning and you'll go, ooh, I've got a pain in my back. And then we just give it a story. It's because I slept or whatever. Instead of going, well, what emotions get held in the hip? And oh, when was the first time I remember having this pain? And if we can get through that, then we can actually get through, oh, you know what? I've been storing some pretty serious power control issues right here. Let's work on that.
Right. It's it's bringing awareness to those areas versus just kind of brushing them off like it's just a coincidence or just something that always happens with you. I don't know if you watched Christine and I talk last week. She used a lot of sound therapy and sound healing for traumatic brain injury. And she actually used the term in our conversation that she had to get knocked up on the side of her head, right? Like to bring awareness to, you know, the direction her life was heading. And
I love that.
Yeah. And so it's just that intentional awareness to, okay, so this event happened in my life, or this pain is in my life, or, but it's to bring awareness. And, you know, they start off sometimes as little whispers. And if you're not listening to the whisper, they get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And then, next thing you know, it just depends on, I guess, when you decide to listen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And we carry so much of that from when we're little. So that's why I try to catch those teenagers.
I bet it's been really powerful for them. What type of, have you seen a lot of growth and awareness and healing through this?
Yeah. And a lot of recognizing, like I had this cute girl, and she had processed, she remembered being, you know, the age and everything, but she had processed that she had a eating problem and that she was overweight when she was really young because somebody made a comment to her about eating a second hamburger. And that was buried so deep. But once we kind of uncovered that just a teeny little bit, then she was able to catch all of those thoughts that said, oh, you shouldn't, or you know, all of those messages that we process about our bodies. And so there's a lot of, even if it's just a shift in their mindset, that to me is huge.
Oh, absolutely. Right. It's allowing themselves to feel that healing and break up with that old story.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like that's where it's been powerful. Cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So I know that you were a big champion of, I don't know if that's the right word, champion. Well, maybe it's not the right word. Okay, you'll come up with a better word because you're definitely super wordy. But
wordy.
You are wordy. I love your words. You have beautiful words. You have a giant vocabulary. And so, so let's talk just a little bit about sex trafficking. And I know that you have spoke a lot on this subject, and it's something that's very passionate and close to you. And so I don't want to say, I guess, would the word be champion? Like you champion that effort against it? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, go ahead. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, so I was introduced to how big the topic was actually almost exactly a year ago. I'm going to a conference in March. It was that conference that I learned just how pervasive it is. And I think for me, the reason I jumped on board was it has a lot of, do you remember when Lane was little, I'm guessing he's probably old enough, but we talked a lot about the boogeyman or the stranger danger. Was that a thing when Lane was little?
Absolutely.
And we used this word stranger danger. And so we taught our kids this belief that it was strangers that would put them in harm's way. And it wasn't necessarily going to be people that they knew. You know, so then we had kiddos who thought when Uncle so-and-so touched me on my private parts, that wasn't stranger danger because it was Uncle so-and-so.
Right.
So we have the same problem right now with trafficking. We believe that it's these people, that most of them are making a choice, and that this is the high risk. And we know it exists and we hear the numbers, but we really don't realize that it's very, very likely that the person next door has a child that's experiencing trafficking, either grooming or trafficking threat. And especially here in suburban life, we really, we live in a bubble that just we can't afford to live in anymore. So that's kind of why I jumped on board with it. Dallas actually has one of the highest. We're second. We lead the nation, or we're second in the nation for number of girls trafficked in an evening. And our suburbs are at the most risk. Where we are right now is the highest risk area in Dallas. And so that speaks a lot to the fact that we don't know a lot about what's happening. So that's kind of why I jumped into it, to maybe give a little bit of voice to this little crowd that's not being paid attention to in popular media. It's a group that needs to be paid attention to.
Yeah, my son, when he was 14, maybe he was younger than that. Maybe he was 12. I wish I could remember the exact age, but he was young, maybe 13, 14. And there was a man who was identifying himself as a woman on social media and was pulling a group of my son and his friends in, luring them in. And, you know, of course, my son thought he was talking to an older girl, and he was really talking to a man. And we got a call from the FBI.
Oh my gracious.
Yeah. And had to go in and, you know, talk about it. And Lane was able to, you know, seek some therapy after that through the FBI. They offered some services, but it's just, you know, our kids' little minds that just, you're right. You know, you know, he thought that he was speaking to a girl who was a friend of a friend, right? So he was introduced.
Yeah.
And so he thought, oh, well, this is a friend. And so it wasn't a stranger because he was introduced as a friend. And it, you know, it ended up being caught. But this man was talking to, I think, about 40 different kids.
Yeah.
And I don't think it went extremely far because someone, you know, caught it before it did. You know, somebody was really aware, but yeah, I had no idea. I was clueless when I got the phone call. And so, I mean, the FBI was super helpful and really, you know, I feel like they really treated the situation very well. But it's, yeah, can happen anywhere.
Well, and the grooming process is so sophisticated. And like you said, it starts out, it's again, the best way to say it is that grooming process is just so sophisticated. But it goes back to what I was saying about what I do with the adolescents is one thing that I'm really a huge fan of is kind of that worst case scenario. If the worst thing happens to our kids, if they make the most difficult choice that we can imagine, do they believe that we will still love them unconditionally? And if we haven't taught that, then nothing else matters. And a lot of us, that means we're going to have to go back and reteach that lesson, which means we're going to have some. I have a son who had a coming out process a couple of years ago, and he just said to me about a month ago, Mom, but there's 14 years of other stuff I have to uncover before I can feel comfortable at church. and it's not, I think that we don't realize how much we have to do that sometimes in our own beliefs from the way we were raised, even if we're doing our own spiritual awakening, if we're not doing that with our kids alongside of us, then they're still carrying these little things that we didn't even have to have told them we would be mad at them if they did this or this. You were talking about the Super Bowl. You talked about that on a couple weeks ago, right? On your or on this webinar.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of how many seeds that planted in our kids' minds as to what we thought was right or wrong, even if we never pulled our daughters aside and said, this is what I'll think about you if you dress that way, but they processed that. And if we don't go back and unpack some of that, then our kiddos aren't going to come and tell us when things are happening to them, because, and that is one of the lures of the groomer. That's one of their first jobs, is to help the child feel comfortable with them, but also to feel unloved by their family. And it's part of the process. So if we haven't taught unconditional love, then it's going to be real easy for them to buy that lie.
Yeah, it totally is. I remember, this is something even just on a much, for me, I think it's a much, smaller topic than sex trafficking or anything else that they don't feel comfortable coming to us with. But I remember, this was just a year ago, which might be a year and a half ago now, but it seems it's so fresh in my mind when I was talking about my son, and I was encouraging my son to, live his life in a different way that he was choosing. So I was encouraging him to be more free-spirited and travel Europe, and don't get a real job right now, and don't go into sales, because that's what I went into, right? I was trying to I wanted to go to Europe when I was young, and I didn't do it, right? I didn't do the backpacking experience. and I went into more, I started waiting tables and wanted to make money right away. And so I was trying to, I thought I was trying to shelter him and have fun versus, going into this, the adult world. Right. And so, of course it sounds like, oh, well, she's just this cool hippie mom and wants her kid to have this great time. And yet it was what I was wishing I would have done. It was what probably I still want to backpack across Europe,
Yeah.
And so I was trying to push my wants off on him, and that just wasn't where he was at the time.
Yeah.
And so when I had that conversation, it was with Jessica Hallstrom. When I had that conversation, she said, no, that's what you want. And I didn't even see it.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like I was being the cool mom, right? And so but no, it was what I wanted. It wasn't what he wanted. And so, I came home and I, profusely apologized to him for, oh my God, I was pushing my beliefs off on you. And he's like, Mom, it's okay. And I go, did I screw you up? He's like, no, Mom. I'm like, okay, you can tell me anything. It's just, but we get, even if we think it's like a protection thing,
Yeah.
once we've got them to a certain age, but always having that open line of communication, but it's shifting from that manager role,
Yeah,
to, an open communication and an open line, because I think that, there's still so much like thoughts of like, you have to control this little human.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think that we do one of two things based on the way we were raised. And I think we do both of them really, but we either overindulge because we want them to have more than we had, or we want to protect them from the mistakes that we made. But if we really think about it, it's all of the I don't even think there's mistakes, but all of our hardship stuff is what created who we are. So why we keep trying to protect them from contrast in life is beyond me. I just can't, like, and I do it too. So but I have to catch myself all the time. Why am I trying to protect you from this?
Yeah, exactly. It's conscious parenting. Is that right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's being just like really super aware, and it's this, we don't want them to make, because I feel like, some of the things that I did in my childhood, I know that they were around, some shame and guilt. And so I tried so hard to go absolutely the opposite direction. And I have this wonderful, awesome, loving son. Yet, I know there's, there's some areas where, I wish that, it's all perfect, right? And it's all just whatever we've done, as long as we let them know how loved they are, and there's that open line of communication, and they know that they can come to us with anything. I feel like that's our best role as a parent, right?
Yeah. Like I said, what's the outcome? As I've watched my kids over the past couple of years, I keep thinking, what's my end outcome here? Like what really matters? And really in the end, I want all of us to be united. So I want to respect privacy without, but keep vulnerability. So, finding that fine line between privacy and vulnerability is a big deal to me right now. And I want them to feel loved, not just by me and my husband, but by one another. And ultimately, I want all of the people who marry into our family to feel just as loved. Like those are my end all goals. And everything else is, whether you go to school or not, whether you're employed full-time or like, all of that's just noise and choice. But those are the three things that matter to me.
I love it.
Yeah.
You're a very wise woman, Treisha.
Thank you. Hard earned.
Yeah, I always love, I love our lunches. Really, I do. I always pick something up that really makes me stop and think and ponder. So I always appreciate that about you. So talk to me just a little bit about what's coming up for you. So I know that you speak in different areas. So what are some of the things that you're speaking on this year?
So this year I am, like I said earlier, I'm trying to figure out how to combine the three. I've tried to keep my mom journey and my academic journey and my yoga journey kind of all separate in the past. And I'm this year branching into bringing them all into one. And so I'm going out on a limb in the academic world and talking about mindfulness and identity from our family's perspective. So I've taken our family's experiences with, if you were to get some sort of a textbook that said, these are all the right things to do, our family had an X by all of them, and then still we had all these other things that happened that weren't really supposed to happen. Right. And so it's been a learning experience for us. But it's also, so I've taken all of that and looked at the research that kind of says, not necessarily why, I don't care why, but how we can bounce forward. So I'm taking our family's experiences, the science between hope and mindfulness, and bringing that into conferences. So that's what I'm doing this year, and talking about how the identity of when kiddos are trying to develop their identities, a lot of times moms have to redefine their identity. Like you kind of had to let go of certain aspects of control to let Lane choose his choices. I'm in that. I think that happens to a lot of women. A lot of women go, ooh, what do I believe? If this is happening, do I really still believe these things that I was taught when I was little? Right. So anyway, so that's what I'm talking about on the academic world. And I have a book that I am so close to having it to a point where I can get it published. My goal is by June. So I'm really, that's kind of my big, I'm going to use the word script. It's on my script. And so I'm kind of hoping for that. And then honestly, I've watched you with this, and this was something on my, oh, I wished I had the courage to do. And I've watched you and watched you from the sidelines and gone, I really want to get a video cast up. So I'd like that to counter where me and my daughter talk on the podcast. I'd like the mom perspective, or the, I'm going to say caretaker perspective on videos. So that's kind of my big three.
It's fantastic. Look at you. I mean, I love watching people's growth, and it's, you know, it's so important, you know, when you are associating with friends and colleagues and the people that you have in your world, that you have people like you that, that you can, you know, have that lunch with. And, and our lunches are always, they're always like about like inspiring and encouraging and moving up and growth, but always, you know, just reminding each other that, hey, you're okay exactly where you are too, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that because, you know, we don't, you know, of course you can talk about some hard topics and you can talk about some like shit that's happened, but it's not ever like a commiserating thing, right? It's like a, how is this like a growth opportunity? And I think that those kind of people are so important to have in your life because it just helps with your own personal expansion. So I thank you for always being that one of those people in my life.
That's funny to me though, because I'm thinking it's you. Like, as I'm thinking, as you're saying that, I'm going, well, do you realize that's you? Like, do you realize that that's your, you know, you've been, anyway, that's really how I see you.
Thanks, Tricia. I appreciate you. Yeah. Well, I am so excited to see all of your things this year and your grace journey this year as well. And I'm excited because like when we had, I think we had lunch, maybe it's been a little bit. So maybe third quarter of last year is probably when we had lunch, and you weren't that far along on your book at that point. So
it wasn't, I had lots and lots of ideas of different things that I could do. And, but I honestly, I think I spent most of that, the next couple of months trying to figure out what is the most important thing that I want to say. And in all honesty, it came from, I had a little bit of, I keep calling it a nervous breakdown, but I was thinking about it a couple of days ago and I probably shouldn't call it that anymore. But I think it was my last little breakthrough of the glasses that were holding me back and over the holidays. And I think I needed, boy, I was still holding back because I was so afraid of our story. And I really needed to have that little breakthrough for me to say, there's going to be haters no matter what, and I have to be okay with it. And as soon as I accepted that, then the book has just rolled.
How cool is that? Yeah. That's so cool. It's like once you have the acceptance, then it just releases the hold.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had to, you know what, the other thing I was thinking about today is, I know you and I have talked a little bit about Abraham Hicks and Esther Hicks. We've shared those thoughts back and forth. Or more, you've shared them for me and I've said thank you. But, but I was thinking about something she said the other day was, when we're in flow, things move so much easier. So like 2 seconds of flow is equivalent to 2 years of resistant action. And as I pondered on that a lot, and I realized that's actually when I let life when I lead by my heart, that's really how my life goes. And I had to, again, go back and count all of the times over the past 40 years of my life where things came really easy. And it's not because I wasn't busy, but it was just, I was trusting the process. And I think that I kept pushing this book idea so much that I was giving it more resistance. And now I'm just, most of it gets written while I'm on a walk with my kids as dogs. Honestly, I walk the dogs and I have all these thoughts and I record the thoughts and come home and transcribe. So it's been weird.
Oh, it's great. But everybody has their own process. And that's just awesome that you allowed yourself the openness to discover that process.
Yeah.
Mine was Brene Brown's vulnerability TED Talk that really opened me up to realizing that I was so stuck in such a perfectionism trap. And then I went in and, started healing some of that shame and guilt stuff from my past. But then also, you're right. There's always going to be people who disagree and, look at things in a different way. But as long as, we're always speaking from our hearts. So I always just continue to practice at allowing myself play, allowing myself to, giving myself lots of space. And then I find that, because I was trying to force myself into life coaching.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I can give people some advice or I can help people like uncover some hidden things. And I can help people, my husband's like, you're the world's biggest cheerleader. That's how he describes me. And I'm like, I know. And I'm sure he gets sick of it. But, so I've always, kind of had that championing, spirit about me. And so I thought, oh, okay, well, so some life coaching. But I was trying to force myself into that little field because I thought, oh, well, that's just the next step. And then this Stay Wild Child was somebody had just kind of planted that little seed in my mind. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a great idea. That is so right up my alley. And it just seems effortless. And, I'm always coming with an open heart around it. And I don't exactly know what it's going to turn into, but it doesn't even matter because I enjoy it. And I think once you take those rules off of what the thing should look like, and then it just flows.
Yeah. I love that. But that fun part that you've added has also been a huge inspiration. I know to me, but my guess is to a lot of your friends and followers, just that you're playing and reminding us to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we forget.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. So bad.
We just forget. Someone had posted, I think it was it Chandra? I can't remember exactly who it was, but somebody had posted, it was a shamanic community, and it was these little kids and they were running and dancing and playing. And it said the shaman's cure for depression, anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
And it said, and their questions were, when did you forget to dance? When did you stop playing? When did you stop creating? Because that's what we're here for, right? To live in our fullest expression. And when we're playing and creating and whatever that is for you, that's just when all the magic starts to percolate. And it's interesting because you stop all the, the pressure. Mm-hmm. You stop the pressure of the outcome.
Yeah. Well, just like with yoga, if you think about how much you learn from a yoga posture when you're not doing it correctly. Right. You learn, so like, I love teaching people how to fall out of a headstand or how to fall, forward from like an arm balance posture or something. Just not because that's the goal, but because you learn so much about what makes you strong when you fall and when you topple. But we're so, like you said, we're so worried about, well, what's the right way to do this, that we forget to let ourselves stumble once in a while. And it's those things that you're learning about yourself. Boy, that's the best way to hear your mind chatter, is when you're wrapped up in your silks that you're doing and you go to fall out, like what was the first word that came to your mind? That's a really good indicator of what kind of mind chatter you have that day. And it's a really fast way to catch it because you hear it loud and clear when you're playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so interesting that you just said that, because I happened to be, I was a little bit hormonal last week because something was coming on. And so I was a little hormonal, and I was apparently being pretty hard on myself in my playtime. I was apparently speaking like I was beating myself up because I couldn't get this move and that I'd been trying. And my friend Suzanne, she said, sometimes we don't get, it took me forever to get that move. She gently reminded me of that. And I said, was I talking a lot of shit? Was I like beating myself up? She goes, yeah, you were. And I go, oh boy.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh boy, this is my playtime. And yet I'm in super critical mode of, how I didn't get that move. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think we do that. We do that a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for jumping on today. And I appreciate your courage and stepping out from behind the microphone and on the camera.
I know.
And
thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And for sure, you have to come in again, like end of November or December for sure. Or when you launch your book. Yeah, we got to have you then too. Yeah. But I want to, I'll post all of your, like your page and all that good stuff. And you and your daughter's podcast under, after we finish this recording, and I'll get us up on YouTube so that you can share it as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I was actually going to make sure we did that.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, girl. All right, y'all. Well, y'all have an awesome rest of your day, and thanks for joining. And we'll be back again next Monday, noon Central Standard Time. Y'all have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.